Validation rules allow you to control what data gets saved in the database. If you try and enter a value that isn't allowed by the validation rule, Access will display a warning and allow you to fix the problem. Let's put some validation rules into effect on our employees table. First, I'm going to double-click on the employees table to open it up. Now, in our employees table, we have a hire date column here. I want to make sure that the dates that are entered are either today's date or earlier. I don't want to be able to enter in a date that's in the future. Let's scroll over to the right. We also have a job rating field here. Our job ratings fall in the range of 1 to 5. I don't want somebody to be able to put in a 0, for example, or a 10. So I'm going to create validation rules to control the data entry on these two fields. We'll do that by switching into Design View. Now for the hire date field, I'll click there. We've got these properties down here for validation rule. When I click in the validation rule property, the build button shows up over on the right. I'll click that to launch the expression builder. Here, we're going to type in the code for our validation rule. We want the dates that are earlier or equal to today. That will launch the expression builder. And here, we're going to type in our validation rule. I'll type less than equals to, and then the code to get today's date, which in Access is just the date function, and then open parentheses, and then a close parentheses. Go ahead and say OK. And Access adds that rule down here in our property. The validation text line is a string of text that'll show up if somebody enters an invalid record. This can be really a friendly message here, so I'm going to type in, must be today's date or earlier. Okay, so that's our first validation rule. Now we're going to add the one for job rating here. I'll click on Validation Rule, and once again return to the Expression Builder by clicking the Build button. The validation rule for our job rating is that we only want values that are greater than or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 5. I'll go ahead and say OK to accept that validation rule. And this time, I'm going to leave the validation text blank. If you leave it blank, you just get a generic error message when somebody enters in an invalid record. So let me go ahead and see what those changes look like. We'll save the changes to our table by clicking the Save icon on the Quick Access toolbar, and then we'll accept this message here that says Data Integrity Rules have been changed. Existing data may not be valid for the new rules. That's fine. Go ahead and say yes, and we'll switch into Datasheet View. Now I'm going to scroll over here, and let's try and edit this hire date here. Currently it says 6 January 1998. Let's enter in a date in the future. 1/1 and then 22/13. If I try and press Tab to move off of that field, I get the error. Must be today's date or earlier. OK. I can always press the Escape key to return to the last valid entry value. Now let's press Tab to go over to my job rating. If I try and type in a 0 and press Enter, I get a generic error message that says one or more values are prohibited by the validation rule. OK, I'll say that. And if I change it to 10, I get the same error message. Go ahead and say OK, and I'll change it to something that's in the right range, like 5, and press Enter, and it accepts that value. So validation rules can act as gatekeepers to make sure that you can trust the data that is saved in your tables. I would recommend that anytime you use a validation rule, you should always also put in a friendly reminder in the validation text property. It provides additional instruction to the person that is trying to type in the values into your table.